Hey, my name's Josh Flores. I'm the Director of English Language Arts here at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Welcome to PD on Your Plan, Let's Talk Writing Session 3. Remember, the ideas, suggestions, and resources from today's session are based on my own opinion, and they are merely suggestions for you to take and do with what you will. For today's session, make sure you have visited elaokteachers.com and downloaded the resources available here before getting started. Our takeaways for today are stance, citation, and then of course resources, more resources as always. In argumentative writing, when a writer has determined their stance on a subject, they can then determine the amount and sequence of evidence needed to support their claim or claims or counterclaims. The process to composing an argument includes looking for the evidence, determining your stance based on that evidence, and then of course sequencing the combination of claims and supporting evidences. But, as always, make sure to give credit to earn credibility. Today's session focuses on establishing credibility through in-text citation strategies and takes a look at the process for developing a passage-based response. So let's look at some of those terms. Stance is a writer's position and perspective regarding a topic or idea or issue. For example, homework is necessary for learning. A writer's stance is influenced by the context of the prompt and source material. For purposes of assessment, specifically 5th and 8th grade writing assessment in Oklahoma, the prompt will typically be based on one of three modes: narrative, informal and explanatory, or opinion and argumentative. A formidable writer can recognize the structures in each mode and use this to respond accordingly. Today, we're going to focus on the argument mode. Now, according to our appendix in the state standards, there are three broad reasons a writer wants to engage in arguments. One is to change the audience's perspective about an issue or idea. Two is to elicit the audience to take action for a cause. And three is to ask the audience to accept the writer's analysis or judgment of an idea, issue, or problem. Another important term for our students to note are claims. Claims are a writer's ideas or belief statements used when composing an opinion or argumentative essay. Now, there are two types of claims we focus on with our standards. In opinion-based claims are examples like black is my favorite color, beagles make the best pets, red cars are more appealing than white cars. The second type are argumentative claims. For example, football is dangerous, gymnasts are well-rounded athletes, high-impact running is proven to increase cognitive ability. Each example can be followed by supporting evidence from the writer. However, the examples of argument claims are stronger when supported by research evidence rather than opinions or personal experiences. And indeed, there does exist research to support all three of those argumentative claims. Great research project for your students, don't you think? In general, when I'm explaining claims to students, I'll give them the example, "It rained last night," a very general statement, and follow that up with the definition of evidence. Now, evidence is any information indicating whether a claim is valid or invalid. To continue on from our example of a claim, "It rained last night," our evidence to showing it rained last night is the grass is wet. Now, evidence is gathered through research, experimentation, or from personal experience. It is used most effectively when it provides specific examples to support a claim, highlights another perspective, or expands on the writer's original stance. Here's an example of how a writer may organize their thoughts when composing an argument. Of course, on the outside, we have our prompt and our source material that helps us develop our stance after we analyze that source material, and then develop claims that are supported with evidence that help us back up our stance. Going back to our original stance about homework, here is a CBS News clip that talks about whether homework's good or bad, and it gives dual perspectives on it. Something to share with your students and help them develop their own stance. So they might come up with something like this, showing that homework is necessary as their stance, and before they develop their thesis statement, they would have to come up with a few reasons as to why they believe homework is necessary. For instance, they might say, independence. Homework absolutely teaches me independence. Or they may argue, college prep. Homework totally prepares me for college. And then, of course, they might have to pull and say some arguably absurd claims that homework helps me stay off the streets. All good reasons why we should have a lot of homework in school. I'm sure students will agree. Now, when using evidence, we always reference the original source material. However, for our purposes, in regards to the writing assessments in Oklahoma, you do not need to concentrate on MLA, APA, or any acronym formal citation structures just yet. We want more in-text citation through paraphrasing, summarizing, and sparingly using direct quotations. Now let's look at the process. In the following diagram, you might see the process that a student would have to go through when composing a well-developed argumentative essay. Of course, students would write and use some sort of annotation strategy like jabs to analyze their source material and then develop their own stance. They would open up their writing with this stance, making it very clear what they're going to argue about, and then follow it up with by using claims that are supported by evidences. A single claim can have multiple evidences. A paper might also have multiple claims. So keep that in mind. Those are two formats students can work with. But whenever they do use evidence that is textual, they must remember to choose one of three citation strategies: paraphrasing, summarizing, or quoting. Now, of course, the more claims, the more evidence they use, the more thoroughly they have responded to the prompt. What we do want to see is more of paraphrasing, less of direct quoting. Now, quoting is good, but paraphrasing, as we learned in the first session through the summarization research presented by Marzano, paraphrasing is a way that demonstrates more comprehension from the writer. If they're able to paraphrase or use their own words to describe materials from another text, they essentially are demonstrating that they have a better understanding rather than just forcing quotes in, direct quotes in, and using the words of someone else. And we're going to look at what paraphrasing summarized looks like in this article of the week taken from kellygallagher.org. It's a great resource for free informational text. You can go to kellygallagher.org, go to the top bar, look for the resources drop-down menu, and click on Article of the Week. Today's article is actually a two-parter. There is an excerpt from Why Being a Thinker Means Pocketing Your Cell Phone, and Have Smartphones Killed Boredom, and Is That Good? We're going to focus on the first part together, and then I invite you to do the second part on your own. So naturally, I would have students read it first, maybe do the jabs method. Of course, they can annotate on their own copy. I would have them also number each paragraph so it's easier to reference back and forth. For instance, we are going to go focus on paragraph 11. Paragraph 11 states, "It's no wonder Nicholas Carr raised so much interest with his 2010 book, The Shallows, which was an expansion of his Atlantic Monthly cover story, Is Google Making Us Stupid?" Carr's point is that we aren't thinking, we're browsing. So now we take this quote and we throw it back at the students and ask them to determine, is this an example of paraphrasing, summarizing, or is this a direct quote? Most will argue in favor of summarizing. Why? Well, the closing statement kind of gives it away. If you see, Carr's point is that we aren't thinking, we're browsing. This focuses on a main point from a text, from a large text, but it's one broad main point. And as discussed in previous sessions, a well-developed summary will focus only on main points. However, point out to students the lack of any MLA or APA or any other formal acronymal citations, but the source material is still credited correctly. Now we want to take this expert writing style and imitate it in our own writing, so we would go through and dissect it. We would take a look at how this author accomplished proper citation by focusing on where the author was credited, where the title of the work was credited, and then where their original thoughts occurred. And you see here I have it kind of condensed down. Nicholas Carr raised interest with his book, The Shallows, pointing out that we aren't thinking, we're browsing. With students, make it into a skeleton framework where they could plug in their own ideas and maybe try it out in their own writing. Not forever, ever, but just so they can get the feel of, oh, that's what that feels like to use in-text summarization in order to avoid plagiarizing. Now let's look at another example. We're going to go back to the article and go down to paragraph 15. Paragraph 15, Leopold says, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, Nobel Prize winning economist Daniel Kahneman mentions an experiment in which subjects were shown 3 words and were given 2 seconds to guess if they were linked. Once again, throw it back at the students. Is this paraphrasing, summarizing, or quoting? Hopefully, they will say it's paraphrasing because it's not focusing on the broad main points of one work. It's focusing on a very specific aspect taken from a work. And we once again would want to take it apart, see where the writer, Todd Leopold, focused on the title, introduced the author, and make sure to give them credit, and then put his own paraphrasing in his own words, where he paraphrased this experiment. A couple just key notes regarding specifically 5th and 8th grade writing assessment. Things I noticed and I've been talking about with the assessment team here at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Obviously, we all believe that quoting should be done sparingly. Students might want to experiment in the older grades, but overall we want to see them demonstrate an understanding of what they know through paraphrasing and summarizing. Also, when I was looking at the grade 5 and grade 8 rubrics, a couple things I noticed. Quotations are only mentioned in the informative mode on the grade 5 rubric, and summarizing and paraphrasing seems to be the focus for the opinion mode. However, we have this big switch in the 8th grade, and quotations are mentioned in the informative and argumentative mode. So we talked about stance, we talked about following up that stance by citing resources to strengthen our stance, and we talked about some other resources. If you want more information, you can also find a lot of good stuff at the online writing lab at Purdue, the OWL at Purdue, and that is linked, of course, on this documentation. Please check out Kelly Gallagher, and there are similar articles you might want to consider taking from newsela.com, one of my favorite resources I've been talking about quite a bit, and pairing it up with this specific passage. Oh, and also let's not forget CBS's.com's clip about homework in school. That would be a great one to share with students and get their opinion on. Cell phones, homework, I'm sure they can come up with some sort of argument to talk about in class. Thank you for listening today, and please leave feedback at the bottom of the page. Until next time, take care of your students, take care of yourself, and take care of each other. Bye!